Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. Thank you Katie and Yupana for organizing this exciting webinar. I'm Omar Arab, Executive Vice President Corporate Business at Veritran. It's a pleasure for me to be part of this event where experts will discuss how to create a standout digital banking experience in record time. Maybe you wonder why we highlight experience and speed up two critical elements in digital banking strategy. The first, the user don't compare banks, compare experience. And the second, time to market. We need to have time to market for to build customer-centric experience, and we need to have customer journey strategy for the financial industry. So let's dive into the discussion to learn what makes the work factor in digital banking and how institutions can develop this experience in record time. Katie, Dries, and Gray, I give you the floor.
Thank you so much, Omar. Thank you so much, Omar Arab from Veritran. Good morning, I'm Katie Llanos-Small, the founder of Yupana, and I'm delighted to have you all here for this webinar on what makes the wow factor in digital banking and how banks can get there in record time. We'll be talking today around what exactly is the wow factor, why it's important. We'll talk about some of the key elements in digital banking channels that banks should look to optimize to achieve the wow factor. And then we'll talk about the role of speed, right? Why it's important to roll out changes quickly and how banks can do that. And GREYNIER Fuentes from Veritran will be able to talk to us around low-code platforms and how they can help in that arena. At the end, we're going to have a space for questions from you. So if you have a question for the panelist, please feel free to pop it into the questions tab, which is on the right-hand side of your screen. We have a general chat where you can add your comments and share your perspectives on what we're talking about. If you have a specific question for the panelists, we'd love to hear it. Please put it into the questions tab. Before you start putting your questions to us, we have a question for you. There is a survey live in the polls tab, which is, what is the key aspect of digital banking that banks should prioritize when they're optimizing? What's the main aspect that you should work on first? What should be the priority? That poll is live in the polls tab, so I invite you all to share your perspectives there, and we can talk about it a little later in the webinar. Let me introduce today's panelists. I'm delighted to have you all here. DRISS TEMSAMANI is Head of Digital Channels and Data for Citi in Latin America. Welcome, DRISS. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
GREYNIER Fuentes is Vice President for Digital Channels at Veritran. Welcome, GREYNIER. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And Omar Arab, who you have already met, is the Executive Vice President for Corporate Business at Veritran. Omar, thank you again for being here.
Thank you.
So let's start by talking about what is the wow factor in digital banking. DRISS, let's start with you. What do you consider to be the wow factor in a digital banking experience?
Well, look, I think it's a very interesting title for a webinar as well as a question, right? Because for a long time, and I say, for years, throughout the banking industry history, we have all worked very hard and strive to satisfy our clients, right? And I think the fact that we can deliver our clients' expectation is considered that we've done a good job. It's considered potentially a wow factor, but I think it's beyond that. The analogy that I usually give my team, and if they hear me now say this, they will probably smile, is that, how many times have you been in an airplane ride, right? And when the airplane lands, people clap. It's almost like they were actually expecting a different outcome that the airplane landed. And so, there are just certain things when you do, they are expected. They're not wow factors. And I think the wow factor in banking, in the financial services industry, has to be about letting the client, surprising your clients, right? So if a client did not expect something, it came completely as a surprise, I believe that's the wow factor. So it's all about doing something that was not expected from you as a financial services provider, as a bank, to a point where your client expresses themselves as, wow, I just did not see that coming. And we experience that as consumers. I mean, every one of us in our daily life, sometimes we just don't expect our service providers to do something, and we, become ecstatic about it, and we call our friends and family members and say, you would not believe what just happened. This company just did this, and I had no idea. I was just not expecting that. So banks have to seek for that. They have to seek this wow factor, which goes way beyond just delivering the basics.
GREYNIER, how do you characterize the wow factor?
Well, Katie, I think the wow factor goes beyond, the word itself of surprising the client, as Chris mentioned, which is definitely a key point. Being able to give your client, not expecting something and being able to deliver something that makes sense for them. But I think the wow factor is a never-ending process. You always have to keep that magic going for your client, or the end users that are consuming your product or service. So I think being able to deliver specific things that the users are not expecting and that we will deliver value to them is definitely something for the institutions to keep them coming back for more services and product. I'm talking about cross-selling, keeping them loyal to your product and services. Let's talk about back then SMS was the wow factor at some point to get your balance. I'm talking about years ago, to be able to send a text and get your balance right away without having to log in to the online banking. Then came out the applications and so many other things. And today, we have great applications for users to manage their finances, right? To access their accounts. That still requires them to download an application, log in, and perform some kind of action. Now, I want to take that and compare it to the wearables industry, where today, let's look at the example of health application. You simply wake up and you look at your watch, or you look at your Citi, or any of the wearables, and you can, without having to do anything other than looking at your wrist, you get your heart rate, you get how many calories you consume, what you need to be eating. You get all those suggestions without any friction. Why not do the same for banking? Being able to see your balances, being able to know how much you can spend today, being able to see what other people are spending or saving on. So I think thinking outside the box and using new technologies out there. Let's talk about back to the applications that we can do. Face recognition, biometrics, fingerprints to login. Why not implement more secure technology like iris recognition, which it's actually one of the most secure biometrics means, and it contains more data than 9 or 10 fingerprints. So I think being able to take advantage of new technologies and being able to deliver on that promise will keep those customers in the wow state and having them coming back for more.
Interesting reflections there, both DRISS and GREYNIER. Thank you for that. There's a lot of elements there, but what I wanted to ask was, does this wow factor, does it change depending on what type of client you're serving, maybe who the demographic is, whether you're targeting young clients or older clients, or maybe you're a bank that targets a broad range of clients? And how do you, or should you try and have a slightly different wow factor for different demographics, or is it is the wow factor something that sort of transcends those questions? GREYNIER, maybe be interested in your perspectives on this.
Sure. And I think it's all about personalization. The users need personalized content. In fact, they will get frustrated if they're looking at something that doesn't make or is not relevant to them. So being able to definitely, you need to personalize, and you need and depending on the audience, you need, data can provide us with, with those opportunities to get the content that we need to those end users, right? We need to take advantage of that, be able to make simplify the design and provide that great user experience to show that content, which is completely personalized, and it makes 100% of sense to that particular user or a target of customers. So I think it's all about personalization there.
Driss, from your perspective, why should we aim for the wow factor in digital banking? Why, airlines, I mean, they aim to land on time and safely every time anyway. It's it's part of the basic service that they provide, and people applaud it. Why should we, as a bank, why should a bank try and go above and beyond to get that round of applause from a client?
Well, look, I think digitization, one of the impacts or effects of digitization is that for one is everything has become integrated, right? So the different journeys that we as individuals take, as well as corporations and industries or public sector entities, so forth, so on, these journeys are becoming integrated. It's very hard to separate a payment from ordering groceries, or very hard to separate let's say a cross-border transaction, a payment that includes a foreign exchange element, right? From tracking that payment as it hops from one country to another one until it reaches its destination, and the expectation to get information while that's happening is just, it has to be there. It's no longer an option, right? So everything is being integrated, right? Experiences are integrated into payments, and transactional aspects are coming all together into one journey. They're no longer in verticals. So that's for one. And second, I think the velocity of all of this is also being accelerated, right? So we no longer move large amounts of monies once a month. We're now moving very little amounts of monies every second, and it's happening 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, right? So expectations have evolved, and the velocity is accelerated, right? What this, when you couple all of this with the fact that there are new entrants, right? So there are very good companies who are born focusing on payment intermediation, right? As well as technology companies coming in to disrupt certain spaces, including banking. We can no longer think in a traditional way. So we have to now come together and take something that has become commoditized. All banks do payments, right? All banks can give you statements. All banks can process a transaction locally or cross-border, right? They can finance a transaction as well. So that is now extremely commoditized. And so what is the value? How do you bring value on the top of a payment, right? How do you bring value on the top of a financing transaction? Well, then, as GREYNIER said, data becomes very important. One, so now we have a lot of information about these transactions, and we have to bring information about these transactions and put it against information about who is consuming that transaction. That's all about these journeys that I mentioned, right? Individual journeys and corporate journeys. And we have to do it in a way that is not just providing a static picture. We have to do it with intelligence, right? So we have to start predicting, we have to start customizing, and we have to start recommending to those who are consuming these transactions, so that they can see value in them, and no longer just accept from banks the status quo, which is basically what everyone can do. So fintechs and technology coming together with banks that have all the transactional volume and have been serving all these clients, as well as a very accelerated digital transformation that is changing client expectations. So it's no longer, it's not good enough. And so you gotta seek the wow factor, right? So if you're a bank and you traditionally just offered your banking services, it's no longer accepted as the fundamentals, the essentials. Now, clients are seeking more. They want more integrated journeys, and they also want seamless experiences. They don't want to deal with a bank in a different way that they will actually deal with an application to order a transportation service or groceries to be delivered to their home. They want all of that to feel and act the same. So that's where I think the differentiation is going to happen, as well as potentially seeking this wow factor for banks.
Super. So it's a matter of adding value. It's a matter of keeping up with and ahead of the new competitors that are coming into the market. And it's the fact that with the data that banks have available, they can offer these digital wow factors, as it were. There's a lot to talk about there in terms of how you can do this and I guess what the tools are that banks have to do this. I want to talk quickly about the poll and talk a little bit about where banks should focus their efforts when they're thinking about how to optimize their digital banking services, their digital banking channels to deliver the wow factor. Where should they focus? I'm seeing on the poll that the audience that is here with us today has said that overwhelmingly the focus should be on onboarding processes. They also say payments options are important, and both of those are far ahead of viewing account balances and mobile alerts and notifications. Interested to talk then a little around whether GREYNIER and DRISS, you see that the onboarding process should really be the key element that banks focus on, and if so, why? And if not, why not? GREYNIER, do you want to speak to this?
Sure. And definitely, and I'm, I was happy to hear the poll results, because definitely onboarding and COVID-19, the pandemic made it more evident, right? That the demand for digital is definitely multiplied with the pandemic. And in fact, at Veritran, we've deployed 5 wallets in less than 4 months, just because the pandemic required certain organizations to become digital and be able to offer those their products and services some way of digital, whether that was through a mobile app or the web. I mean, obviously the mobile is the target these days, but definitely the key is being able to onboard your customers in a way that is frictionless to them. It's transparent, it's easy, very intuitive, and very simple. Users don't want to go through complicated processes, so the less steps that you require you to be able to onboard them on your platform, the better. And usually, and that's what keeps the users engaged to your products or services. Consumers, they like to buy, and users, they like service, but they don't. But today's consumers and users, they don't want to be sold, or they don't want to be told what to use, right? So organizations have to make sure that they keep that magic going, to make sure they use whenever the user needs to use a product or a service, they automatically think of your product because you thought about them, your content made sense to them, and they automatically think of you not as the seller, they think of you as a partner. So I think that's where and it all starts with that experience with onboarding those users into your product.
Right. So their onboarding is I guess the first real digital touch point, and it's got to be a nice experience. It's like a welcome mat, as it were, for digital customers. And if you can set the tone maybe like that, then the clients will continue to think about your app and to use your app because it just works. It gets things done for them, right? DRISS, would you agree with this? Do you think that the onboarding is kind of the key part of a digital banking experience that banks should be optimizing?
Absolutely. So look, I think banks have been investing in technology for since the 70s, right? And yes, the language changes from electronification to digitization, so forth, so on. But The technologies obviously are better, and the adoption is much faster, and everything is accelerated, as we said before. But what happened, the way banks electronify or digitize is really, it's like looking at an iceberg, right? So electronic banking, mobile banking, all that is like the tip of this iceberg. And what's underneath the water is all the traditional banks' complexities and regulatory aspects of being a financial institution, a regulated financial institution, right? So all the different platforms for risk management and onboarding, including know your customer and all that, the paperwork that's required to adhere by the regulatory aspects, be it for a global bank that operates in a country as well as across the world and is regulated, let's say in the US, so forth, so on. These are complex themes, right? And so if we want for a bank to become digital, right? So that its client can not only come in from a digital storefront, right, which is this tip of the iceberg, and then after passing that line, that client can consume that bank digitally all the way to the back. And when I say all the way to the back is, again, onboarding, right? That's one of the biggest verticals of these complexities that exist underneath the waterline for a bank. So the digital transformation journey for a bank is complex and long, but it can be done, and it can be done in an expedited way. And for that to happen, you need to start digitizing the bank from the inside, right? So that your client can consume you from the time they come in all the way to the back, and they can do it in real time, including playing back information to them and giving them statuses on where they stand with a particular transaction or an account that's being opened, right? So, for example, Citi, in the last 2 years, that's where we have focused, right? So we have focused on digitizing ourselves from the inside. It wasn't good enough to have a very good electronic banking platform that wins awards and offering our clients APIs so that they can actually connect to their wallets and offer them services that extends to their customer base, right? It wasn't good enough. We wanted to take on a journey to digitize ourselves from the inside. That's digitizing an account opening process from an onboarding point of view. And that means a client could actually start a request, an account opening request through their electronic banking platform, and us doing all of that in a straight through process in a digitized way, all the way to as I said, the know your customer processes and reusing existing information that we had about that client and displaying it back in real time so they know where they stand in that process and when things get completed. We're doing this for our billing process. We're doing this for our statement processes. We're also digitizing our Salesforce so that actually the interactions between our clients and our sales teams is done in a digitized way and in a very efficient way. So again, it's a journey. It's a complex journey, and onboarding is one of the top themes when you survey clients and as it came through the poll that you're running now, Katie, in this webinar. But there are many other aspects, right? There's a lot of paperwork, a lot of signature maintenance and signature verifications that needs to take place, right? And a lot of information that needs to be played back to the client for their reconciliation, as well as for their legal processes, closing the day, closing the month, so forth, so on. So all of this has to be digitized in a way that that's our clients, right? That throughout the financial industry, banks can start to behave as a digital bank, as a pure digital bank, not a hybrid.
That's really interesting, Driss. So a lot of the work that you've been doing, just to drill down onto that a little more, is in terms of perhaps organizing the data in the back end and structuring it so that you can offer that full sort of suite of digital services. Is that kind of, or maybe you could talk a little more about the core of that work and how you have delivered that. Is that what it comes down to, kind of the structuring the data and the data architecture?
Correct. So the way we look at our value proposition, we look at it in layers, right? And in the center of that, the value proposition, and as you go down in the layers, is our network, right? So these are our banking licenses that we have in 99 countries around the world, right? So you have to qualify to have a banking license to operate in one of these countries, and that creates an access point for us, right? So when you look at our value proposition, that is the center of our value proposition, and it gives us a license to operate, right? Right on the top of this layer, right, comes the data. Now, this data is a result of all our processing that we do in these countries across this network, right? So, of course, I won't talk about the technology layer, but all of our platforms, what they end up doing is just emitting data. Now, this is just pure raw data. And of course, this data, to your point, has to be you have to put it in certain catalog and tag it along a certain theme. Hence comes, for example, onboarding. And within that onboarding, you have information you already collected on your clients, that if they need to do an account maintenance, or they need to now open another account in a different country, where not originally where you opened that account for them, you can start to reuse that data and display it back to them, so they can only add what is missing. And again, these are interactions in the past, happened through phone, through emails, took a long time, took back and forth, took a lot of errors. So as you digitize, the benefit is now you have things that are moving much faster. The client is taking control of that situation. Their expectation is now raised, because now they no longer needs to track that interaction throughout the bank through multiple organizations. As you can imagine, an onboarding transaction is handled by multiple departments within a bank structure, right? But now all of that get collapsed because it's digitized and it's through data. So the theme of onboarding has been a great theme for us to learn on how to become a digital bank. And you're absolutely correct. It had a lot to do with the data that we already had and how we leveraged it to create a user experience through a digital interface that our clients could consume and be very happy about.
Perfect. You mentioned there the element of speed and the element of moving quickly and offering digital services quickly. So we might move on to that aspect of the conversation now, talking about why it's important to move quickly, how you can move quickly. And GREYNIER, you're about to tell us a little around the role of low-code platforms in that process as well. Before we dive into that, I just want to remind everybody that's tuned in today that we're going to have a special space for your questions to the panelists at the end of this conversation. So if you have a question that you'd like to ask DRISS or GREYNIER or OMAR, then please pop it into the questions tab, and we'll find a minute at the end of the conversation to answer those questions. Let's talk about speed, the need for speed when it comes to making improvements and upgrading, optimizing digital channels and digital services and digital banking experiences. Why is it important to move quickly? Let's start with the why. GREYNIER, why is it important to move quickly?
Well, definitely time to market is key. The users are demanding digital, and they want it now. They want it real time. So therefore, key point there when the onboarding that we were just talking about, they want to be able to get on the application as quickly and simple as possible without any friction, and be able to start consuming service right away. Being able to get a debit or a credit card, instantly issue on a virtual, where they can now go ahead and transact online or go into a contactless payment. So users are expecting that type of services and speed from the financial institution. Now banks, are heavily regulated, and they're still the most trusted in the world, because that's where people their money, hard-earned money, into banks. So, but again, banks traditionally they end up having trouble when moving quickly to deliver. So, and that's where I think open banking coming in a big role in helping banks move a lot quicker. Being able to to make those services that the data that Chris was talking about earlier, uh, through API. So now banks have data. Open banking has the solution to make that data quickly available, and have other fintechs, for example, come in and collaborate. A long time ago, banks and fintechs were competitive. Today, they're alive. So banks have data, they have licenses, they have the trust from the users, and fintechs can move very quickly in making sense out of that data and creating, again, that personalized technology is there, the data is there. So how do we get that in the hands of the users? I think it's two things: low code as a technical platform, and two, it's culture, something we haven't touched today. Culture. People are usually afraid of change, especially in corporate. They think their job is going to be replaced by a platform code, which allows developers to build very quickly without having to worry about what we call the plum of modern application. And that's not exactly true. Their role is not getting replaced. Their role is being shifted. Now they don't have to worry about all of that plumbing, and they can now focus on business logic and the value it provides to the end user. So but naturally, people in general act out of self-interest. And self-interest in a corporate environment is supposed to align with the interest of the organization, but that's not always the case. So people are so we need, I guess, we need to educate people that the technology out there is not here to replace their jobs. It's here to shift their role into a position that they now can deliver faster and be able to keep on pricing that end user that well. So if we can put the into the equation here and make it match, and we have perfect collaboration, and we have technology, we have the data, and at the end of the day, everything comes out. So definitely something to keep in mind.
Super interesting. So it's that mix of technology and culture, the people that are using that technology effectively. Those are the two key elements when it comes to making changes to a system and moving quickly. Driss, be interested in hearing your perspectives on this in terms of how you've seen that play out in your work at Citi, and maybe some of your experiences in this regard when it comes to making the changes and making them quickly.
Well, look, this is an unprecedented time, right? I mean, we are now living really historical moments in an industrial revolution, where every time we talk and we say this is extremely accelerated and very fast, then we look back in the year before and we say, wow, that's it's slow, right? So it always appears slow once we pass the milestone. It's just faster and faster every time. And then you look at the financial industry and banks in general, you say, look, you know what? I mean, really, we've been at this for a long time, investing money, implementing technology, but yet the end result is just not there. You look at cash utilization, it's not being impacted in a big way. You look at financial inclusion, same, right? So it's still, we have a lot of unbanked people out there. And you look at the informal economy, it's still a significant part of many countries where we operate. And so I think what's different about now and before, and historically what has happened, are the fintechs, are these tech companies that are coming in, not to disrupt. I never seen fintechs and tech companies coming in to disrupt banking. I've seen them as coming in to close the gaps, right? To put in the last mile that was always missing. And banks are not technology companies, and they don't understand technology as well as those that specialize in technology. Yet banks understand risk management, they understand credit, they understand regulations, and they actually have in their DNA, in the center of the DNA of a bank is trust. I mean, that's about it. Trust in the financial system stability, as well as trust with their clients to come and deposit money in the vault. And so the acceleration of all of this is the need for speed is now. Why? Because again, we just saw what happened in a pandemic situation where for many companies, for many traditional businesses, volumes are down, right? Level of business is down. There has been significant negative impact in many, many businesses. So how do you tackle that? Well, you got to reimagine and rethink your business model. And reimagining and rethinking your business model is not something you can take the next 3 to 5 years doing. You got to do it now, right? You got to redo it now. There's a need for speed in that. And of course, you got to create the wow factor. So the wow factor has to be embedded to be able to create a differentiated value proposition with your competitors. So the way to do that is obviously, coming up with this new business model, right? Rethinking your value proposition, but it's got to be a partnership with the fintechs for banks and with technology companies, and it has to come together so it's a win-win, right? So this cannot be a situation where I come in, I disrupt your industry, and I take your market share and I take your clients, right? I mean, that's at least for the short to medium term, and when I say short to medium term in a Latin America region, that's at least 10 years, 10 to 15, 20 years. And so it's going to be slow for digital banks to be born and get established, as well as fintechs coming in and becoming full banks and become established and taking a significant volume share and a wallet share from traditional banks. So until that happens, then we got to collaborate and we got to partner up to bring the speed of execution and tackle all the opportunities that are in the informal economy. We got to bring all these consumers that are dealing with cash out there every day and put them in the financial system and let industry as well as banks take advantage of that, and fintechs and all, and getting all the benefits and the savings from the cash elimination and the risk, so forth, so on, right? And of course, Greynier just mentioned, the way to do this is a synchronized approach, right? So we have to have the right regulation. We have to have industries that are interested to create incentives, right? A digital dollar or a digital peso has to be worth a lot more than a physical form of it in cash for getting the discounts and the incentives. There has to be acceptance throughout, the merchant networks and all the retailers and everything that where a dollar is spent in a form of cash or a peso, it needs to have an equivalent digital form of it in a wallet. And yes, we got to share information. Open banking is fundamental, right? So we have to have the right environment where fintechs can come in, technology can come in and access this information so they can innovate and create all these products and services, right? And last, to close my point, yes, we are in a region where there is a fear of fraud as well as theft, so forth, so on. The more you digitize, the more vulnerability all of this has, right? Because it can be easily stolen and hacked from anywhere in the world. So in addition to open banking and all of that, we have to also, as industry, financial institutions, work with the public sector, bring the fintechs and the technology together to come up also with laws around digital identity. We have to embed trust in transactions when they become digital, right? And the benefits, we have COVID-19, right? So this is the win in our sale. People did not have a choice. Everybody was confined at home throughout the region. People did not have a choice to go out and acquire services and purchase their not only their groceries, but things for their home and their health. Everything had to be delivered. So the majority of the population end up trying what is the digital experience, right? And so this is the win in our sale to take advantage of and move into a 2021 with this in mind, with this adoption, highly accelerated adoption in mind, to see how we can pursue these regulations and drive the right agenda so we can all capture the opportunities.
There sure is a lot going on, right? In terms of open banking, the integrations, the changes that have come with the pandemic. There are a lot of changes. So that was a really interesting, I guess, glimpse into some of those different challenges. DRISS, thank you. Greynier, when it comes to the digital channels aspect and moving quickly in that regard, Tell us about how low code helps with that fast time to market.
Well, low code is definitely not a new term, and in fact, it's been out since the 70s and 80s. But technology wasn't just there to deliver, what we're capable of delivering today with. So the aim, with the cloud computing technologies and agile architectures and so on, low code has allowed organizations to quickly integrate even their legacy. They don't have to be, because again, institutions, especially banks, who have a lot of data, the data might be sitting there, but it's not accessible openly. So that's where the low code comes in. We're able to integrate not only to services and APIs, we're able to establish those ad hoc connections into those legacy systems and be able to create that experience across all the digital channels. Users don't necessarily, going back to what Omar mentioned in the beginning, users don't really care what's behind the scene. I mean, they know their data is somewhere. They don't care if it's a legacy system or via an API. Users don't compare the institutions; they compare the experience they got out of the institution. And to add on to that, I just want to add one more thing to the equation here: humanization. So people buy and use services because they feel inclined to it means something to them, or it provides us, some gratification when they're buying that product or they're using that service. So if we are able to create a story and put some feelings into the content, that again, going back to the initial conversation, it's personalized. So if we can combine technology and the different players and that are collaborating to deliver on this wow factor, I think that's the icing on the cake, the humanization part of it. Being able to make sure that product or service means something for that user, all the way from the digital onboarding process until they're inside of the system and being able to use and go about their lives when just using those products. And a low code allows organizations to actually deliver on that promise. In fact, building an application in low code is 10 times faster than the traditional method. Just and the fact that you don't have to worry about the plumbing, as I mentioned before, whatever you're building on top of a low code platform, it's secure. The code is being organized and written for you, so you use simple dragging and dropping functionality into a simulator that tells you exactly how the application is going to end up on the. And you write the application once, where you build it, just dragging and dropping, and it automatically works for all digital platforms. It works for the web, it works for the mobile, whether that is Apple or Google, and even Huawei now that has it's not very popular in the US, but it is in Asia and some in Latin America. So it gives you don't have to build the same application for the digital platform. So, besides being able to connect you to those legacy systems and being able to open your data and create that ultimate experience very quickly, then that definitely makes sense for the organization, especially in this time where digital is the must, and it needs to be delivered very quickly.
GREYNIER, when you talk about humanization, is that personalization? What do you mean? Or what's the difference between humanization and personalization?
Well, personalization, I think, is that we have access to the devices, locations that the users are using, right? We have access to all the hardware and the technology in those devices. So we're able, for example, to take a user's location. So if they're in a certain country, we can customize the digital onboarding process to show a background image that represents that particular location. So the user, and then I think that's where humanization, which is really integrated into personalization, comes in. That personalized experience is going to create a feeling for that particular user. So the user now has identified with a personalized experience, and that's where the human factor comes in and kicks in. Hey, love this service now even more because it's actually, they went above and beyond to know that I'm in certain location, and they've done that extra work to show me an image that represents who I am, for example. So they're tightly integrated, but I think personalization, being able to use location data to create content, and then humanization part of it is the feelings that it generates on that user going through that onboarding process or using the product or service.
Perfect. Driss, to come back to you, I'm interested in how maybe you can share some experiences from Citi in terms of how you're able to, or what are some of the challenges that you face when it comes to developing or making changes quickly. As we've discussed, there are so many elements to the topic of digital transformation, and what are some of the challenges and maybe some of the solutions that you've found when it comes to finding ways to move quickly in the process?
Look, I think perhaps a challenge and an opportunity is the fact that many times not all participants are moving in the same speed, right? Or have aligned vectors toward the same opportunity. And when I say participants, these are public sector decision makers, industry anchors, right? Banks, financial institutions, fintechs, and big techs, right? I believe that the best model is where we are all moving toward the same direction and the same speed. And that's what guarantees capturing that opportunity. I think when the agendas are not aligned and where the speed is not the same, the opportunity, it's very hard to capture an opportunity, right? So for example, you can have a great regulation, QR code regulation in one of the countries, very disruptive and important regulation for bankarization and financial inclusion and increasing the velocity and the way the transactions move in the clearing system. But if you don't have the right incentives, then there's not going to be adoption, right? So here is a great regulation, a great push toward financial, digital transformation and financial inclusion, but then industry is not ready to create the right incentives so that the consumers can come in and adopt, right? I always say that, consumers don't care about the form of payment, right? I mean, we as bank, and when we start to look at this and you start to talk about those that actually drive the volumes, an individual doesn't care to use a credit card. I mean, so most of the times a debit card in our region, a check, a cash, so forth, so on. What they're looking for is the discount, right? And sometimes people will actually spend more money driving to a location, spend more money when it comes to gas and time, just because they're going to get a small discount, right? It's very cultural, right? And so why hasn't, for example, you've asked me a question about challenges. Why isn't digital money, right, having an impact as much as the use of cash? Well, because the use of cash today is a discount opportunity. Potentially, there's some, the tax incentives are not there, right? So regulation, banks, the industry, which are the anchors that drive the transactionality in the marketplace, the fintechs that are coming in with the amazing digital experiences, beautiful apps that create the wow factor, well integrated, so forth, so on, with an embedded payment mechanism, very transparent to the user experience. But for some reason, we're not getting to the adoption levels. Yes, it is happening. It's happening fast. COVID-19 literally has pushed that farther than we thought in 6 months versus what we've seen in the last 3 years. But I think the challenge is we got to come together, align the agendas, align the vectors, and create the incentives. Again, I will say it one more time. If I have a peso in a wallet, it should be worth a lot than a physical peso in cash, right? And it should be also accepted everywhere I go, right? And it should have the right tax incentives for the merchants that receive that digital peso and how it gets transferred among the banks. And that will be an alignment to drive all of this forward. And again, for Citi, we see this as a challenge, but we also see it as an opportunity. We see it as an opportunity because more and more we're seeing this alignment. More and more, we're seeing this synchronization. At least in my conversations with various regulators and industry, important clients of ours that we talk to, and partner up with fintechs and big techs. I mean, we do see this coming together in the next few years in the region.
Super. It's interesting that obviously it's not just banks, right? There's a lot of different elements in the ecosystem in terms of, I guess, the cultural aspects of using cash, the regulatory aspects. Those are all really important when it comes to delivering a digital banking experience that gets people excited about it. But we've got a few minutes left. I'm interested in GREYNIER and DRISS, both of you just giving us a quick glimpse into 2021. I'd be interested in your views on what are going to be some of the key elements, the key changes, the key trends when it comes to digital banking and great digital banking experiences. GREYNIER, what do you think is going to be moving the needle next year?
Hi, Katie. I didn't hear the whole question clearly. Can you repeat that? You were cutting out.
Sorry, GREYNIER. I was asking what you think are going to be the major trends when it comes to digital banking experiences in 2021.
I think the main trends is going to be again keeping that innovation going. It is a never-ending process. Being able to deliver more and more services via digital. The users don't want to stop to or go out of their way to consume a product or service. So making it convenient and again back to frictionless for that particular user. And I think being able to change the way users authenticate today, where they don't, where we see the passwords gone forever, and now we can switch to a contactless method of authentication. Being able, and DRISS mentioned, digital identity, that's one thing that could change the experience we provide through the apps, through the wearables, through the web, and be able to provide that next level of experience when it comes to users transacting digitally.
Thank you. DRISS, very briefly, what would you say is the one key trend for 2021 when it comes to digital banking?
Look, I don't think we need any more trends. I think we got plenty to ride on. I think 2021 should be a consolidation year for banks and public sector entities, big tech, fintechs, and industry players. We just got a window just opened for us that showed us that yes, we can transform digitally our economies in the region. And what we need to do now is to make sure we don't go back to the traditional way of conducting business, right? So 2021 should be a consolidation year where we need to come together with the right regulations, the right industry and incentives, and drive the adoption of the existing capabilities that have been deployed in forms of wallets and in forms of payment methods and all of this, so that we can level set an economy that actually can then start to absorb additional trends, additional technologies, potentially digital identity, blockchain, open banking, all that good stuff would come in to sit right on the top of a strong foundation where there's no fear to conduct e-commerce and to pay with a wallet. And yes, if I am getting paid because I delivered a pizza to my wallet, I should now be taking that same wallet on my cell phone and put gas in my motorcycle, right? And at the same time, I should be paying my taxes. And so all of this ecosystem now needs to close up and form up to accept additional trends. That would be my closing thoughts.
A year of consolidation. Fantastic. Thank you, DRISS. Omar, I'd like to pass over to you for some closing remarks.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, folks, for attending this webinar. Before closing, I would like to tell you that Veritran is presenting our first white paper, Cracking the Digital Banking Innovation Code. The code is UXTMSH. it's very important for us to announce the first white paper for you. We would like to share your paper with you before the official launch. When you read, you know if your bank has cracked the digital innovation code. Thank you so much.
Omar, thank you so much. DRISS, GREYNIER, thank you so much. To everybody that joined us today, thank you so much, and hope to see you again soon. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye-bye.